Hello everyone, Storm 101 here. Today I'll be talking about the severe weather threat that's been going on across parts of Iowa, Nebraska, Northern Illinois, into parts of Wisconsin. We're also going to be talking about tomorrow's severe weather threat, which looks to be a little bit interesting across parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. There could be a possible MCV, a Mexico convective vortex, that might go across parts of the Midwest and might bring another day of potential severe weather across parts of the Midwest. So let's go ahead and get started with the SPC outlook here for today. We got an enhanced risk for severe weather across the northeastern Iowa, far southeastern Minnesota, into parts of southern Wisconsin, and very far northeastern or northwestern Illinois. The tornado threat is going to be keeping at 5%. I think it's downtrending with the tornado threat. Uh, but any NFO boundary that's left out there in the good environment, if we could get a supercell going, it has a chance to produce a few tornadoes. But I think it's safe to say that the strong tornado threat is not really there anymore, which is good news. But the primary threat is going to be the damage and wind threat. Uh, we currently have a squall line going on out there, which we'll take a look at in a little bit. And we also got the hail threat. I don't think we're going to see significant hail given the fact we have a weak elevated mix layer going on. So we won't really have strong updraft. So I think the primary threat is really just going to be the damage and winds. And as we look into tomorrow, pretty large margin of risk from northeastern Texas all the way up into parts of western New York and Michigan. And I think the primary threat is just going to be damage and winds. There might be a spit up tornado or two. They have two areas of 2%. You got one up in Michigan, then you got another one in parts of Kansas and Missouri, which then might be associated with a Mexico convective vortex. Damage would be the primary threat. Nobody's not really not really expect hail, but I think that's going to change. Given the fact we may have a pretty strong elevated mix layer on that day. Then on 33, nobody's in a risk, but don't be surprised. The marginal to slight risk might get issued for parts of Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and maybe into parts of northwestern Ohio. That'd be an area to monitor here for any potential severe weather on day 3, which would be Friday. So let's check out what's going on right now. And this is really going to be a kind of big key to what could happen later today. So we got a pretty decent squall line moving through. Pretty much just a line of strong, and there's one spot here that is severe warned as of right now, the time I'm making this video, and it's about to go into Wisconsin. It's getting there. So there might be some strong affluent winds coming out of the storm here, which that could lead to an isolated damage wind threat for the city of WQ. I think that's how you pronounce that. In Iowa there. Yeah, Iowa. Just wanted to double check that. But I think these storms are going to intensify a little bit more as they move into parts of Wisconsin, which will take a look at what the environment looks like at this time here. But these storms here, even though there's not severe warning for the entire line, there could be that chance for some damaging winds, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, which can cause some damage out there. If you look into what's going on ahead of these storms, pretty much nothing going on. So there's nothing really going to weaken these storms here. But I think these storms will intensify as they move into parts of northern Illinois and into Wisconsin as well. So let's take a look to the SPC hourly Mexico analysis here. And as you can see here, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch across parts of northeastern Iowa and southwestern Wisconsin. Don't be surprised if they issue another severe thunderstorm watch for parts of southern and central Wisconsin, maybe slipping into parts of northern Illinois as well. I think they're going to issue another one very soon. But really, the primary threat on this line here is going to be damage and winds, and there might be an isolated tornado threat, but the damage and winds should be your main concern with this squall line. So let's check out the environment out ahead of this. So let's first take a look at surface-based CAPE. We're going to take off that. And as you can see here, We do have a pretty decent amount of surface-based cape out ahead of these storms, really anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 joules per kilogram of cape. That's favorable for some severe weather. Let's look into some other products, like the mixed layer cape, kind of in the mid-levels here. There's not a whole lot out there, but there is some places that get 1,000 joules per kilogram of cape. That would be favorable for some severe weather. Let's expect these numbers to increase. It's currently 12 o'clock their time, so there's still plenty of time for instability to increase out there. So don't be surprised if these numbers do go up throughout the day. The downdraft cape. Now this is going to be one of the big players for the damage to wind threat. I consider 800 above to be favorable for damage to winds for downdraft cape. But when you pass the 1,000 to the 1,200 mark, that really tells you something. Um, but I do consider a really good chance of downdraft cape will probably 1,200 and over. But really, 800 to 1,000 or 1,100 joules per kilogram of downdraft cape is favorable for damaging winds out there. Another ingredient for damaging winds will be the low-level lap rates, which we do have that across eastern Wisconsin. And these numbers probably will increase throughout the day, but really a 7 above will be favorable for damaging winds. And we'll check out the mid-level lap rates, and you can see here there's like nothing out there, so the hailfire won't really be there. And let's see if there's anything else here. Oh yeah, let's check out the wind shear. This is the effective bulk shear. So out ahead of these storms, there's not a whole lot of wind shear to work with. But if you go behind the storms, there's a lot out there. 50 to 55 knots in some places. That's a lot of bulk shear to work with. We'll look into the storm rate to Felicity numbers. There's not a whole lot out there. Really, the best environment here for storm rate to Felicity numbers is back across northeastern Nebraska, which we currently have those storms out there right now. But it has numbers 200 to 300. I consider 150 and above to be pretty good for storm rate to Felicity numbers. That'd be favorable for some good wind shear and sometimes tornadoes with wind shear like that. And we'll check out the composites. Why not? So this is the derecho composite, but don't get too focused on this. But doesn't necessarily mean that derecho is going to happen, but the environment is favorable for what could be a derecho. But there is a level 6. That ain't terribly high. That's kind of in the middle there. Low numbers will be considered like 1, 2, and sometimes 4. But 6 is kind of in the middle. But I don't think we're going to see a derecho here. But this can also indicate there could be a pretty decent mesoscale convective system, though, which we'll check out the mesoscale convective system maintenance here, which if I could find it, mesoscale convective system maintenance, it's a 60 out of, I believe, 100 here. So that's a pretty decent chance here for a mesoscale convective system across southwestern Iowa, and expect these numbers to increase here. But let's also check out how much cloud cover there is out there. Let's check out visible satellite out here. And there is quite a bit of cloud cover out there right now. That can limit the instability values. But areas where they are starting to get some sun, that's where some of the highest CAPE numbers are right now, which is across southwestern Iowa to parts of northern Missouri, which those numbers are still increasing. So we're going to see here if these clouds could clear up at time here to get some quite a bit of instability for northwestern Iowa here, which models are indicating development will be happening somewhere in northwestern Iowa into parts of northeastern Nebraska into southern Minnesota. That's going to be the area of focus for initiation, and we could probably see a squall of storms move for across central and southern Iowa, where there is a lot of CAPE out there, and it is favorable for a mesoscale convective system as well. So let's check out the HRRR model. We're going to check out the HRRR model today because it does update every hour. I did just take a look at the NAM and the HIRES NAM. They're not doing well with the reflectivity so far. And same way with the HRRR. Even though it's updated, still ain't doing so well with it. You can see here, at this point here, there is a decent line of storms over here, and what the what the higher, wow, what the HER is showing, uh, shows it dying out. I don't think that's going to happen. So take this reflectivity as a grain of salt, but it does show a pretty decent cluster to move in across parts of southern Iowa. If the HER model is correct, we could probably see a couple supercells, which is also hitting on a couple supercells in northern Iowa, which again, take this as a grain of salt here. But what most models do agree on is that a cluster of thunderstorms may form somewhere in the northwestern side of Iowa to parts of southern Minnesota and northeastern Nebraska. That's something all these models have in common. So we pretty much have a decent idea with that. And then when you kind of get into the evening hours, you can see here with that decent, these storms should eventually become a decent cluster here. So if it does, there could be a widespread damage and wind threat across parts of Iowa, which I think that's definitely possible there. But with the HER model with the reflectivity, I'll take it as a grain of salt for now, but any supercell that develops out there has a better opportunity to produce all hazards. Hail, damage winds, and maybe even for a couple tornadoes, which there could be multiple supercells out there, but I think the strong tornado threat is kind of fizzled out a little bit because we do not have not as much wind shear as forecasted, and the photographs are not as big of what they were showing yesterday. But so let's kind of check out the environment here from the HER model. Let's see what it says here. We'll just look into. Let's check out the surface space cape here real quick. Should load uh, decently quickly here. Okay, so this is what the HER does predict. So let's kind of compare that for what's going on right now to what the HER says. We'll do that first. So 3,500, 30,000 cape across southern and southwestern Iowa. It's actually doing pretty well so far, so I'll give some credit to that. But you can see the numbers do go down a little bit, which I have doubts on as I think those numbers are going to continue to increase. But then you start to see those stores start to initiate. But let's check out some of these soundings out there across Iowa here for today. See what they got here. And you can see here, there is going to be a couple problems here with tornado development, and one of those is a little bit of a lack of wind shear, especially in the 1 kilometer area, 104. That's not really favorable for tornadoes, but however, in the 3 kilometer in the EFF inflow, it is favorable. That's over 150, but the 1 kilometer is 104, which may affect the tornado probability. Also, your photograph is a little bit smaller, but this is still favorable for maybe an isolated tornado or a quick spin-up tornado. But what models were showing before was showing more in a variety of maybe a little bit stronger tornadoes. But right now, models are not really showing that anymore. But we also do have quite a bit of cape out there. This is also a favorable environment here for damage winds. Downdraft cape, 765, but I kind of give that a pass. Low level lap rates is 8.1. You also got the dew point and temperature line spread apart at the surface. There's also some wind direction and height here, which is which is good for tornado development. So at least we have that. But it's just the story to velocity numbers that might bring a little bit of limitation, plus the photograph as well. But overall, this is not a bad sounding. Probably some hail. I don't think we're going to expect very large hail or anything, but there could be some hail out there. There is a little bit of an elevated mix layer around 500 millibars, which isn't bad. So let's kind of check out somewhere else out here in Iowa. Let's go a little further to the northeast here. So what we got out here? Oh, a little bit of a better environment here. I can see here. The photograph is a little bit larger, but check out the wind direction of height though. Quite a bit of wind direction of height. There's also some decent 850 millibar winds as well. So it can affect the damage wind threat. Again, sorry to velocity numbers. Just about favorable for tornadoes as well, especially at 3 kilometers, 404. It's pretty high, but the rest of the numbers are not as high. All right, downdraft Cape 838. These are low lap rates. And also, still a little bit spread apart the surface here with the dew point and temperature line. So this would be a favorable environment here for damage winds and maybe isolated tornadoes with this sounding here. And then we're going to kind of go a little bit after dark here. We'll get one more sounding here. We'll kind of move on to the next day here. And as you can see here, holograph a little bit smaller. That's just to be expected here. So relative velocity numbers, they're good. Not as much of wind direction of height there. They're becoming a little bit more kind of going the same direction here, but they're still a little bit there left. Downdraft Cape not as favorable, but the low overlap rates is still there, and the temperature dew point line is still there. So this again would be favorable for damage and winds, and maybe an isolated tornado, possibly. But again, for areas across Iowa, even into parts of southern Wisconsin, and maybe into parts of northern Illinois, need to watch the severe weather chances today. Some places may see 2 rounds severe weather, which some places already seen round number 1 across parts of northern and northeastern Iowa. And you guys may see another round of severe weather later today. So the severe weather threat for you guys is not over just yet. But we're going to have to see if those clouds could clear out fast enough to where that instability could get up there, and we may have to see a chance for some storm initiation. But I think up in Minnesota here, given just look at the latest HERM model, I think Minnesota, I think you guys will be good to go. But we'll still watch the places kind of along the state line there. Still watch for that potential for severe weather. But I think most people in Minnesota should be good with the severe weather potential, which I think that's some good news there. All right, let's kind of move on to the next day here. So again, Higher Sam not doing so well, but does show a couple of cluster storms that may form across parts of maybe into southern Minnesota, but I'm not having a lot of trust with this model here, especially what it looks like right now, kind of along the state line. There's like not much of any instability. Still plenty of cloud cover out there. But let's kind of move on to the next day here. So Thursday, we gotta watch for places across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and maybe into parts of Ohio. Maybe a little bit further south as well, where some of these places have strong downdraft Cape numbers. Some places got it exceeding 1200. That's pretty high. There's even very strong low level lap rates, especially with the herds indicating. There is some pretty strong low level lap rates out there. There's also pretty large spread with the dew point and temperature lines at the surface with the skew T's, which we'll go back to the HERM model and check out that day there. So we'll put that onto surface-based Cape there with the HERM model. So while that loads, let's check out the HIRS name here real quick. And you can see here, it does show some isolated showers of thunderstorm activity across parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, even across parts of Kentucky as well. Then you gotta watch back here, across parts of northeastern Kansas and northwestern Missouri. This is where that mesoscale vortex starts to come in. Those guys may have a better chance to see severe weather than people out further east. Uh, Typically, mesoscale vortexes can produce damaging winds and even tornadoes. What mesoscale vortexes are, they're kind of like a little low pressure system, and sometimes these things can cause little severe weather outbreaks. That's actually what caused the little bit of a tornado outbreak across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan about a week or two ago. That was caused by a mesoscale convective vortex. And as you can see here, as we kind of get into the evening hours, we got a pretty decent squall line out across eastern Kansas to northwestern Missouri. Meanwhile, further to the east, do have a couple cluster of storms out there. And as we continue on here into the overnight hours, then you get to see the mesoscale convective vortex. You can see how this thing starts to spin around here. That is going to be your mesoscale convective vortex. And then you see here what's going to go on the next day here. And bam, You get some new storms that fire up here. Some of these could be supercells, especially closer to the Mexico convective vortex where there is more wind shear to work with. But generally speaking here, there could be a chance of severe weather probably as far south as the lower Ohio Valley. But I think the greatest risk for severe weather would be areas that's where it's a little bit closer to the Mexico convective vortex, which could be more focused across parts of Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. And we'll get a couple soundings out there as well. So we'll transition that over to surface-based CAPE. And let's check out the HRRR model here on this 12Z run. So you can see here with the HRRR model on this 12Z run here, there's a lot of instability out there, surface-based wise. Pretty much anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE out there. We'll get a couple soundings out there. We'll go to central Illinois here. And as you can see here, this is not really going to be a favorable environment for tornadoes. There's going to be like no wind shear out there. And there might be an isolated QLCS tornado, probably up in Michigan. But for areas across parts of Illinois and Indiana, the tornado threat would pretty much be non-existent here. There's like no wind shear to work with, but the primary concern would be the damage wind threat. And you can see here, we got strong low overlap rates. Downdraft CAPE, not really impressive in this environment here, but you'll probably see a couple soundings later, where some other places may see a lot of that type of action there. So let's kind of go back further to the west here. Let's kind of pay attention to the Mexico convective vortex further out west here. So we'll go into northwestern Missouri here. And as you can see here, this is still not really a favorable environment here for tornadoes. Still pretty low in the wind shear. Still spread apart at the surface there with the skew T of the dew point and temperature line. Still some decent low overlap rates. Downdraft CAPE is a little bit better than the last sounding, 604. That ain't bad. And also, again, the tornado threat looks to be staying pretty low in this environment here. But if we do go a little bit further to the south here, where some places might actually be in a pretty favorable environment here. Let's go into parts of Kentucky here. And you can see here, it's a little bit of a different story here. But this really has to depend on if any storms develop, though. But you can see here, very strong elevated mixer here. That could indicate a large hail threat. But you also see here, look at the temperature line, dew point line, the surface. Pretty spread apart there. There's even a little bit of wind direction of height as well, but the winds are not really that strong. There isn't much wind shear. The tornado threat is not really there. But look at the downdraft CAPE though, over 1,200. That's pretty high. And that's very favorable for damage winds. You also got 8.3 on the low overlap rates as well. I saw one sounding earlier across parts of central Kentucky that had low overlap rates of over a 9. And that is pretty high. And that is some pretty strong overlap rates. That may be favorable for damage winds. But there's not a whole lot of moisture out there. 1.34 precipitable water numbers, which is how much moisture is up in the atmosphere. And there's not a whole lot out there, but if we could get some of that stronger updrafts, pretty much basically any shower storm develops has a chance to produce pretty gusty winds. And I've looked at the HRRR model with the wind gusts within some of those storms across parts of Kentucky, even into parts of southern Indiana and Ohio. It shows wind gusts could be at anywhere from 30 to 50 miles per hour. So there could be some pretty gusty storms further south there. And those folks are kind of in a pretty good environment here. Let's kind of go back further up north here. Let's go into northern Indiana. See what they got up there. See, even right here, it's still a pretty decent environment here as well. And you got dew point and temperature line spread across at the surface. Plus, there's a lot more moisture to work with, close to 2 inches in some places. So that's pretty good for some severe weather. Well, for thunderstorm development. Downdraft CAPE 677. That isn't completely garbage, but that ain't too bad. Low overlap rates 8.2. So this will be a favorable environment here for damage winds here, primarily. There's even some decent upper level wind support here, especially around 850 millbars. So that's also going to kind of add on to the damage and wind threat as well. It's those upper level winds, where they're a little bit stronger up there. And then you kind of see how some of these sources does initiate. There's also another area. There's a pretty good area here with a lot of cape. And check this out here. This is pretty impressive here. Talking about one heck of an elevated mix layer at 500 millibars. Man, it goes off to QT. That's ridiculous. That's a very strong elevated mix layer at 500 millibars. And that can help produce some large hail out there. So I think the large hail threat could be there for some places. But also, check out that downdrive cape. 1400. That's extremely high. So that's favorable for damage and winds. Um, Still spread apart at the surface with the temperature dew point line. There is a little bit of wind shear at 3 kilometers here. 168. So there might be a low end QLCS tornado there. And you can see there's a little bit of a curve to the photograph. And also got strong low level lap rates as well, which is going to help the damage wind threat. So this will be favorable for possibly all hazards. I think there is going to be a low end large hail threat. It kind of depends on where the strong elevated mix layer is going to be with the large hail side of things. But for the tornado threat, that's really going to really depend on where some of your strongest wind shear is going to be. Damage wind threat is pretty much for everybody. So, still something to watch here very closely here. Then we'll kind of check out the high-res NAM here real quick with the surface-based cape. And you can see here, shows a lot of cape out there. Look at southeastern Iowa here, 4,500 for some places. That's a lot of cape. And then as we move on to Thursday here, check out all this capes out here. And typically, the high-res NAM does a better job with the environment status, especially with surface-based cape. It has done pretty well in the past. So let's get a couple soundings out there. And as you can see here, across the northern Indiana, you got a pretty decent elevated mix layer here. So that'd be favorable for some hail. There's also some decent 850 millibar wind, so it's just going to help with the lift and the damage wind threat. Not a whole lot of wind shear to work with. Pretty much on the weak side of things. Also, your photograph is a little bit smaller. But downdraft cape, 1300. That's favorable for damage winds. Low lap rates is at a 7. That's a little, but that's still favorable for some damage winds. So this ain't a bad sounding here either. Probably favorable for damage winds and maybe some hail. That's sounding there. Let's go a little bit further south here. Let's go into Severn, Indiana. Because this could be a little bit widespread for everybody here. And as you can see here, very strong elevated mix layer out here. Very strong. You can also see here, plenty of cape out here. 4,900 close to 5,000. That's pretty high. Downdraft cape, 1,300. Low lap rates is good. It's not really spread apart the surface there, but I'm not really going to buy too much into that. Also, wind shear is too weak for tornadoes. So this is favorable for damage to winds and hail with this sounding here. We'll go back further to the west here. Let's move it to western Missouri, where there might be a better opportunity here for tornadoes, which it actually does. With MSCO convective vortex, you got pretty good or decent photograph there. Also, pointing wind direction of high tier between the surface and 850 millibars. It's quite a bit there. There's also a decent amount of wind shear, at least at 3 kilometers in the inflow. But at 1 kilometer there, it's a little bit, it's under 150, but the other places here, it's favorable for some tornadoes. Downdraft cape 1200. Low lap rates is pretty good as well. So this is favorable for maybe all hazards, including this elevated mix layer here, which may be favorable for some hail. So this is probably favorable for all hazards in the sounding here. But that 1 kilometer wind shear there might become a little bit of a factor into the tornado threat. But overall, I think it's going to be favorable for some tornado development. Then you also kind of see your squall lines start to go through here across parts of eastern Kansas and western Missouri. Don't be surprised if a slight risk gets upgraded out there. I think it's pretty doable, and there could be another slight risk across parts of Illinois and Indiana, maybe into parts of Michigan as well. But you can see here with all this cape out here, there's a lot of cape. Let's kind of go to that bullseye in central Illinois. This will be the last ending we'll take a look. Which, yeah, shows a lot of cape out there. 5,700, that's a lot. Even with a strong elevated mix layer, so that'd be favorable for some large hail. Wind shear will be on the weaker side of things. With a downdraft cape, low overlap rates, that'd be good for damage to winds. So not a bad sounding here, but overall, I think everybody in these places here probably has a chance to see some damage to winds, maybe some hail, and I think the tornado threat will probably stay out of across parts of Kansas and Missouri, maybe into parts of Michigan. Let's get a sounding up there real quick. Let's get up into southeastern Michigan really quick. Yeah, wind shear looks to be on the weaker side. Hodograph is pretty small as well, so this is not really favorable for tornadoes. Maybe a quick spin up, but not really favorable. Wind shears will be on the weaker side of things, but I think the greatest tornado threat will probably stick in somewhere across parts of northeastern Kansas and northwestern Missouri. We'll take a look at the NAM very quickly here. I know this video is starting to get pretty long, but we'll at least take a look at its reflectivity. And you can see here, it shows a pretty decent squall line. I think the models have trended a little bit further south with the development here. Her model's a little bit further north, and now some of these models are showing development more across central Indiana, northwestern Ohio, into south central Illinois. And then you got this MCV back here across parts of eastern Kansas and northwestern Missouri. You can see how it continues up to the northeast here. Looks like your MCV may take a little bit of a northerly track here on the NAMP here. It actually brings it up across parts of northern Illinois. And then you can see kind of its trailing front here. Some of these places might experience some damaging winds out here, which is a possibility here. But the greatest tornado threat will be closer to that low, or that Mexico convective vortex. And it looks like I may stay a little bit stationary here into Saturday here. So here's your Mexico convective system right here. And your front's probably something like this here. And it's showing, it does show a couple big storms kind of forming along that front. So, but we'll probably have a better idea as we kind of get closer to the event here. But it looks like the Midwest might have to deal with some severe weather over the next couple days. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you really like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, leave the comment section down below. I'll answer you guys' questions. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.